Hi everyone, I'm going to show you how to paint this Thankful Wreath painting. We're going to do the background first, and you'll need a 3/4 inch flat wash brush in the following colors: burnt sienna, burnt umber, and titanium white. This is very similar to a lot of the paintings that I've done recently, so the apple painting and the blue truck painting with the background. So I'm going to triple load my brush, starting with the white because I want mostly white, and I'm going to do each corner a different brown. So I have a reddish brown on there, and then I have that dark cool brown on there. And I'm going to let the colors kind of surprise me here, and I'm going to do up and down strokes, let the colors blend on the canvas. So as I go along, I can decide, okay, well maybe I want that a little bit darker. So maybe next time I load my brush, I'll add just a little bit more of the brown on both of the corners and see what happens. The goal is to make a light sort of rustic wood background, not too dark, because if it was too dark, the wreath won't be showing up very well. So kind of like a light medium color. And I'm going to just go along and keep loading my brush that way, up and down strokes, very consistent, no short brush marks or anything like that. I'm going to show you a close-up. So when I'm loading the brush, I'm got a lot of white on there. I'm kind of dragging it out a little bit so that it's not all gooped up on there. And then as you go along, you may find that your brush is starting to get a little bit dry, so that when that happens, you can dip it in the water. Make sure that you tap it on the side of your water dish so that it's not dripping. And then also when you reload the brush after loading it with the water, kind of drag it out a little bit more, because at this point, if we had dripping water, the water might go into that wet paint and kind of make it run a little bit, and we don't want that effect. So you can load your brush with more water, but make sure that it's not dripping wet so the water doesn't mix with the colors now. And I found it easy to turn my canvas over to do that top part, and it ended up looking kind of inconsistent with the bottom, but it actually worked out in the end. So don't worry about that if you're turning it over and think, oh, that's not matching, but you can easily just kind of blend it in by dragging the paint down to the bottom areas. And then I don't show it in this video, but I did paint the sides. So I usually use whatever is left over on my palette to do the sides of the canvas, especially for this top part. We want it to dry completely before we do the paper plate. So I used the leftover paint to do the sides. And then by the time I was done with the sides, the top part of the canvas was dry. So that worked out. You will need to wait for that to dry, as mentioned. And this is a paper plate. I'm going to use that to trace a circle. So I have a piece of chalk, this is like a standard size party plate. I believe it's 9 inches. And then I'm going to make sure that it's pretty center. I'm going to use that chalk. You can use a pencil. A pencil works too. Just anything to trace. And that circle is going to be used as a guide to paint our wreath. Next, you'll need a round brush. This is a number 5 round brush. So I would call this like a medium size round brush. It has a point to it. It's going to be used to paint some very basic leaves. I'm going to load my palette with cadmium yellow medium, cadmium yellow dark, yellow oxide, naphthol crimson, and titanium white. Now, I'm going to dip my brush in the water, pat dry, and I'm going to grab the naphthol crimson first. I'm actually going to double load it in the white and the red. So the point of this is to make each of the leaves kind of stand out with each other by painting them a different color. And those are the colors I chose. If you don't have those exact colors, you can choose a few different shades of whatever yellow paints you have, or a few different shades of whatever red paints you have. The point is that we're painting sort of fall leaves here, and you can see that I'm not rinsing my brush. I'm just loading it with a different color each time I paint a leaf. So a very simple, basic leaf shape, and loading it with a different color. You could do a pattern. I don't think I sticked with this pattern, so you can do dark yellow, light yellow, medium light yellow, red, and then repeat that pattern. Or you can just kind of grab the colors as you go. I ended up not using a lot of the titanium white, but the titanium white does help to give you a different tint of that color, so that if you want a yellow leaf to stand out against another yellow leaf, you can grab the white and it'll create a different tint. And then notice the leaves are overlapping, and I'm going this direction now. Some of the leaves are pointing angled towards the middle of the circle. Some of them are angled out. So a lot of variety in these leaves. And this is the base of our wreath. You can see kind of the effect that double loading the white creates in some of the lower leaves that I did. And so that's what you can do as well. Okay, I'm going to completely rinse this brush and I'm going to switch to a 10-0 liner. So this is a brush that's for tiny details. I'm going to use the color Burnt Umber and I'm going to paint some twigs sticking out of this wreath. And I believe I did 4 or 5 twigs. When you use this tiny detail brush and you dip it in the water, a lot of times water likes to accumulate on the brush, so you want to make sure you kind of wipe it off on the towel so the water doesn't drip down to the bristles of this brush because it's so tiny. So basically, you're painting the twig and it's just kind of sticking out of the wreath. So like a curved line from the wreath and it's sticking out. So they're kind of go in a few different directions here. And then I'm going to do this sort of Y twig. So it's like a Y, but there's a line in the middle of the Y. And then I'm going to do some berries with the color Dioxazine Purple, and I'm going to use the liner to paint little circles along. These are just the twigs, the not wide twigs, so the straight twigs or the curved twigs. So just paint little bundles of circles. I think one thing that's kind of important about painting wreaths is you don't really need to be making anything look like realism here. So I'm not going to, I do add a little yellow highlight to these berries, but they're pretty much just circles at this point. I'm not going to worry about making them look like realistic berries. Same with the thing with the leaves. They were just the simplest kind of shaped leaf that I can think of. So the effect is kind of what the overall picture looks like of everything just kind of brought together in the end. So there's a lot of details, but there's nothing realistic about this painting, nothing difficult, just taking easy, tiny, simple steps at a time. So each of these twigs gets different bundles of circles of different shapes. And then for the Y twigs, I used a different color. I used Alizaria and Crimson Hue Permanent. This is kind of a dark burgundy red. If you don't have that color, you can use cadmium red or just any red that you have in your collection. And I'm going to do some more berries, but these are just on the tips of those Y branches. And then I went in and made little tiny dots just over some of the leaves and just another detail. So I mentioned this in the written out instructions, but I kind of call wreath painting a sort of Zen sort of thing. It almost reminds me of Zen tangles, where you just kind of let creativity lead the way. You're painting different objects and then you keep adding a different layer of something else and a different color of something else. So if you want to branch off and do something different, that's perfectly fine. And painting these little dots kind of created a neat effect. And then next what I did was I mixed the alizarin crimson with the burnt umber. I wanted to make a reddish dark brown color and paint sort of like a maple leaf on these wreaths. I think I only did 3 leaves like that. So I'm doing kind of a 4, 5 prong maple leaf. And I'm filling it in with that dark reddish brown color. And so I'm going to use the stamper, these Martha Stewart pouncers, to paint the center of these small flowers. And of course, you can use a regular paintbrush to paint these circles. I find that these are kind of fun to do. So any chance I get to paint a circle, if I need to stamp a perfect circle, I use them because these are so much fun to use, these pouncers. I believe this is the smallest one in the set, and I did 4 circles. And then I'm going to do kind of a purple red color. So I'm mixing dioxazine purple with alizarin crimson, and it's going to make this kind of maroon dark color. And the brush I'm using right now is a number 4 bright, and I end up switching to a round brush because it was easier because these are kind of small. The flat brush that I'm using right now is kind of a little too big for these petals, so I'm going to switch here in just a second. But very simple basic petal. Again, we're not looking for realism here, and I'm just doing the petals all the way around this circle. So I'm going to switch back to that number 5 and do the petals for all these flowers. So you see me mixing more colors on the palette, and I believe I'm grabbing the alizarin crimson, just adding a little bit more, and I think I grabbed a little bit of the burnt umber in the mix. So as you go along and you remix colors, you don't, at least I don't worry about making the proportions exactly the same again. The color variation kind of helps. So this one is kind of a darker with a little bit of brown in it, and that's okay. So I'm going to continue painting petals on all of my flowers. And then I grabbed my 10-0 liner again, and I'm painting little tiny dots on the circle. Perhaps these are small sunflowers. You don't see that one. The little picture was covering it, but I did dots on that flower circle as well. And then on the bottom part of the petals that are towards the circle, I did these little white lines. So again, just another added detail to this painting. All these little tiny details come together and accumulate in the end to create the whole picture. And then little white lines on this flower. Okay. So I have the larger pouncer. I believe this is the second to largest or the largest one in the set. So one of the larger pouncers in that set. And I'm stamping it to create the large sunflower center that's on the lower left hand corner. And I'm going to use a number bright and the color titanium white because I want to white out these petals. Yellow is a translucent color, so I usually white out anything I'm going to do solid yellow. So this flat brush, this is a number 4 bright brush. It's about a 1/4 inch. So I'm pressing firm and I'm twisting. So press firm and twist, and that creates the shape. So you press firm to start out, and then you twist. And when you twist the brush, you're using kind of the more of the edge of it, and it creates a sharper edge. So you press firm and twist, press firm and twist. If you've ever taken like a one-stroke class, it's kind of that concept. And press firm and twist. So I have the base white color of my sunflower, and I'm not going to do them yellow yet. So I'm going to stamp the other flower. This is also a large pouncer, but it's a little bit smaller than the other one I did. Of course, you can do the same size. It's fine. You can pick any of the sizes actually. So I'm going to stamp and twist. That's with the burnt umber. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to white out the petals for this one. I guess technically you don't really have to because the petals on this one are going to be dark anyway, but I whited them out anyway because I wanted to make sure that they are gonna be opaque against whatever's behind the wreath, so it looks like it's on top. So I'm still using that number 4 bright, doing my press firm and twist sort of movement with the brush. So I rinsed my brush off all the way, and I grabbed both of that cad yellow deep, cad yellow medium. So either of those colors will work. I think I did more of the deep, but I double loaded in both the colors. Anyway, so you're going to paint over the white and the same kind of stroke, pressing firm and twisting to cover. And it's okay if you have a little bit of white showing through. It gives it some dimension and color variation. So again, we're not going for realism here. I guess this is like decorative painting, if you want to call it that. And then I'm going to do the little white dots in the middle of that sunflower. And I might as well do it on this one too. That brown wasn't dried all the way, so it started mixing a little bit, but that was okay. And a little bit of more white dots going around the edges. And then I originally wanted those petals on the upper right to be very dark, kind of like a burgundy dark color. I didn't wait for that white to dry all the way, so what happened was it mixed with white, so it was a lighter color. But basically on my palette, I mixed the dioxazine purple with the alizarin crimson, so that very dark red with that very dark purple, and did the same thing with the bright brush, press firm and twist to create the point, and it ended up mixing with the white anyway, so we got a light burgundy color. And then I did the little white lines on those petals as well. So definitely not a perfect flower, but again, you got to look at it as the whole picture here. We can't focus on this little tiny detail and think that it should be realism, because it's all about the whole picture of this painting. And then, so what I'm doing with the 10-0 liner and titanium white, I'm going to add little tiny highlight on all of these berries with the white. So I'm doing just a little curved line on the left side of all the berries. And then the reddish berries as well. And then I did the white on the bottom of the petals here. So there is my wreath, and I did a few more details. Decided that there should be some more dioxazine purple berries here. So you can go on, you can keep adding more details to this wreath. Eventually it might look kind of a little too busy if you just keep adding and adding. So you take a step back and kind of see what spots need a little something. And I did some more dots with the dioxazine purple. now we're going to do the word. And I drew out the word thankful with chalk first because I wanted to make sure that the letters and spacing were correct. And then when you finally get it correct, and if you mess up, that's totally fine. Just get a wet paintbrush and lightly brush it off and let it dry a bit and try it again with the chalk. You could look at different fonts on the computer. I just did basic cursive. And then definitely use your 10-0 liner for this to draw out the letters. Make sure, so I'm wiping my brush here because the water from the brush started dripping down on this liner. So you make sure you get it dry with the paper towel before you start. This is a very detailed step. So basically it's just painting over what I drew with the chalk. Very simple. And then if you do mess up, that's okay. You can wait for it to dry and then just get the same colors that we did in the background, paint over it, and you won't even notice that the letters were painted over and redone. Then I like to go back in and make some of the lines kind of thicker. So this painting has come to its conclusion. A super simple, very detailed design, but very easy. Looks very pretty with any Thanksgiving decorations, or I have it hanging in my kitchen, so the colors actually complement very nicely. So thanks for watching, and I look forward to bringing you some new Christmas and holiday paintings, and happy Thanksgiving.